Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 934. I had the black pieces. My opponent started off with e4. I played the Scandinavian defense with d5. So white took. I played knight f6. This is my favorite way of rounding up the pawn. Actually, queen takes d5 is more popular, but now this is the line I've learned to play. And my opponent plays one of the less sane moves, but it's actually quite playable. So c4, I go c6, and he doesn't go for the gambit. If he plays d takes c6, this is the Scandinavian gambit, and it's quite a good gambit for black. White can't stop me from playing e5, and then I have good control over the d4 square, and that's enough compensation for the pawn. So I've played that quite a few times, and I enjoy it. So he avoided that and played knight c3, which is still an interesting way to play. So I went ahead and took, which is the main move. And now here's a choice. White could play d4 here. And this would transpose. This is now a different opening. This is the Panov-Botvinnik attack against the Caro-Kann. Imagine if I had played c6 and d5 against e4 and d4, and then white had exchanged there, pulling the c-pawn here, and then played c4 to undermine the center. That's the Panov-Botvinnik attack against the Caro-Kann. So it's funny how these openings relate to each other, and just defending the center with e6 is normal, or developing with knight c6. It leads to an okay position for both sides. Interesting play. So, but let's go back to the game. He went ahead and took here. And that's still in the opening book. I take the pawn, and he could keep exchanging, but normally white just develops here. It looks funny at first for white that that white has this isolated pawn, which is back here on d2, but he gets on d4, and he's got decent development. He's got open lines for his bishops, and so it's typical kind of isolated queen pawn position. And white is doing fine there, so nothing to be afraid of. Let's see, did I look at that line at all? Yeah, knight f3, just to show how it might go. Knight f3, knight c6, then either d4 or bishop to b5. Could be played here, but you see that there's no stopping that d4 move, so white is going to get a good share of the center. And knight to f3 stopped me from... Actually, didn't stop me. I could have considered playing e4 there, maybe. Anyway, in the game, he didn't play any of those. He didn't play knight f3 or any of these other moves. He played g3. And we're just out of the opening book at this point. And I went with e5, which seems like the most natural move here. Chess Engine thinks actually black has an advantage here and should play knight to b4. This is one of those rule-breaking moves. This piece is the only piece that I have developed. I've already moved it twice, and here I am moving it a third time before developing any other piece. But it has a concrete idea of coming into d3 with check and grabbing the bishop pair. And, well, maybe this queen is a bit of an annoying piece. And, white's development isn't so great here either. And especially now that I've gotten rid of that light squared bishop, these light squares may be weak on the king side. So although knight b4 looks to me like a funny move, it seems like it's working in this case. Anyway, I went with e4, just staking my claim to the center. He goes bishop g2, and once again I could play knight b4, but I just retreated my knight to f6, and now the position is about even in the eyes of the chess engine. Let's see, he went knight e2, knight g2, and I went bishop e7. I did want to point out, I was kind of mumbling about this during the game. If I play bishop b4, yeah, and I checked this out to make sure I was correct, he has this nice sequence here. He plays the check, and a lot of times you can defend that with knight to c6. Blocks the check and defends the bishop. But in this case, there's a big problem, which is this diagonal is open here, and the bishop can take that knight off with check. And after I retake the bishop, he gets a free piece there. So this move, bishop to b4 here, would just lose a piece. Bishop to c5, though, is probably a better move than what I played. Bishop b7 is a little too quiet. I could have posted it to a better position here. He castled, I castled. He went d4. So this is a good play by white, just opening up the center and getting rid of his potentially backwards pawn. And he trades, and now I end up playing bishop c5 anyway. So that's one reason why bishop to c5 in the first place would have been a better move. It would have maybe saved me a tempo there. Maybe I could have even stopped him from playing d4. But anyway, he, let's see, another alternative in this position besides bishop c5 would be to play bishop g4. I thought this was an interesting line because what I was concerned about was this undefended b pawn, and you know when the bishop takes that b pawn, if my bishop develops and white takes the b pawn, then my rook is hanging in the corner too. So I have to be careful about my configuration over here. But bishop to c5 can be played because it's a tempo on the queen. If if he plays f3 or something to block that check, then there's no problem because the bishop is no longer attacking b2. So queen a4 is the best response. And then I can play knight bd7, which, first of all, it gives the rook some scope. It can come out to c8. But secondly, it indirectly defends b2 because of the move knight to c5 with a fork. So it knight bd7 gets out of the way of the rook, but also defends the b pawn. And so there's a fine position. So that would have been maybe a little more accurate than bishop to c5. That's a little hard to figure in a blitz game, or even in a over-the-board game. If I hadn't seen the idea here, I doubt if I would have discovered it myself. Anyway, I went bishop c5. He went knight back to f3. He probably should have gone bishop to e3. It's a better defense. Bishop e3, and then I would play knight g4, harassing the bishop, and the game would continue in about even. The kind of a interesting, complicated game with maneuvering on an open board. You don't see that so often, actually. Normally, these maneuvering games are played in closed positions, but it seems we've gotten into a position where there's maneuvering with an open center. Anyway, he retreated his knight back to f3 and went knight c6, and he went bishop g5, and I bring my bishop back to defend. I don't want this pin disrupting my I don't want my queen tied down. First of all, there's the threat of the queen trade and then taking here. So bringing the bishop here allows the queen trade without messing up my kingside pawns, and it also frees up my queen to move away from defense of the knight. So he went rook e1, and I shielded my bishop from his rook with the bishop to e6. He went a3, keeps my knight out of the b4 square, although I don't think that's much of an idea here anymore, although maybe there was potentially an idea of bishop here, knight here, with the threat of knight to c2, but that's kind of far-fetched, I think, at this point. So I decided to go ahead and kick his bishop, and he took. I was a bit surprised at that. He's got a good retreat square at bishop to f4, and the chess engine prefers that. But he took. I took back. So now I have the bishop pair, and my pieces look pretty nice, I think. He goes queen c2. I went queen c7. Comes in with knight e4. So continuing with this maneuvering on an open board, harassing my bishops. I drop this back. Plays knight to d4, harassing my other bishop, but also offering a knight trade. No, it's not offering a trade because it's taking advantage of the pin here. And now I could have just retreated my bishop to d7. That was the chess engine recommendation. But I wasn't liking these continual retreats, so I was looking around for another idea, and I played bishop to d5. Not quite as strong. Let's see. He played rook a to c1, piling up on the c file here. Went rook a to d8, defending my bishop in case this knight moves suddenly. So he took on c6. I took with the bishop. So finally the maneuvering is ended, and we've got into some trades. Plays b4, hoping to exploit the bishop. I need to unpin immediately. I spent some time thinking about it, whether to go here or here or here, and the chess engine rates all those three moves as about equal, so I guess it didn't matter too much. I went here. He went rook c to d1, harassing my queen. I was hoping he might move the other rook and then I could get some pressure on his knight. But he kept everything defended like this. I played queen f5 anyway. That's a good square, actually, for the queen. The chess engine approves. He went queen to c4 here, unpinning the knight. Yeah, it was convenient that it also pinned the knight and prevented it from moving. So I threw in this rook exchange, which the computer also liked. And then I played rook to e8. So this whole sequence I apparently played fairly well. And then he hopped in here to d6. And this exchange is pretty much forced. He's forking my queen and my rook. So he gets the exchange back. And now he followed up. He took back with rook takes d6. And that is a losing move. Although he does have another chance later, so we'll come back to that. But the move he should have played here is bishop takes, and that's what I was expecting. If he just takes here, I take, and then he takes back. And yeah, I was a little bit worried about this position because now white has the better pawn structure. But I have active pieces. And in fact, the chess engine rates this position as about even, although I have to find a good way to use my pieces. So queen f3 is a good way to start. threaten a checkmate. And then queen back to c1 to defend against the mate. Rook to e2, threatening the f2 pawn. Queen to f1. Queen to f1. And then c5. That's the how the chess engine gets out of trouble here. But it seems that it's not a win for black or for white. It just rates this as an even position. Not quite sure the point of this pawn sacrifice. Maybe I'll round up this pawn somehow. I mean, I can't do it now because my rook is hanging. But maybe there's some way to do that after he takes the pawn. Anyway, interesting position, but the chess engine says it's all equal if he had played that way. But he took this way first, which left his back rank open at a time when the bishops are still facing off on this diagonal. So that's extremely dangerous, something you should always be wary of, even if there's no immediate tactic. You always got to look when you leave your back rank unprotected. And these opposing bishops on this diagonal is also another danger signal. So I played the right move here. I went rook e1 check. He blocked. And then I did not play the best move here. The move I played actually allows a defense for white. So here's your chance to play better than me, and you have time to think about it. What's the best move for black here? Okay, pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm giving the answer away now. Now there's more than one winning move, but the move that wins most convincingly is bishop to b4. So we're just piling up on that bishop there. And notice that my queen is defending that bishop. So queen takes bishop, queen takes queen. That's all over. Or if the queen just moves away to some random location, then I'll just take that bishop with check, and I'll be a piece up. Like if the queen dropped back here to defend f2, maybe. So the fighting move here for white to try and stay in the game is queen to c3, hitting the rook. So now if I just take the bishop this way, then white can take my rook, and that's good for white. So I have to take the bishop this way, check. But because it's a check and because the this pawn is not defended, this is still a mate. King goes here. The king has to go back. And now there's a nice mate in 2 here if you want to spot the mate in 2. Okay, I'll give the answer away now. It is rook g2 check. And of course, if the king moves to the side, the queen comes down and mates. Or if the queen takes the rook, then the queen comes down and mates this way. A very pretty dovetail mate. So that's the best move here. Bishop to b5, skewering the queen, as it were, and breaking through on f1. I played, I spotted the weakness on f1, the pin pawn, and I played this move, which threatens a mate in a couple different ways, although the bishop is defended at the moment. And he has a way to defend here. And so The way he played it actually is okay. He goes rook d8 check. I go here. He goes queen d3 check. I go here. And then he has two moves that defend. One is he could just play f3. A pretty simple move because the now that the queen has gotten to the d3 square with tempo, the queen is defending here. And this position is just even. It's complicated still, so who knows how it would actually end. But that is given as an even position. And there's another idea here, which I think is cute as well, a second way to defend. Rook h8 check. And wherever the king goes, whether I take the rook or whether I move to g7, I'm going to be on a dark squared diagonal. So on this dark squared diagonal, so I might as well take the rook. Then queen c3 check. I move the king, and the queen takes this rook and gets out of trouble because now the bishop is unpinned. My queen is hanging, and this position is once again even. so there are actually two defenses in this position, but instead he played b5. He was low on time, and those defenses are not so easy to see, although I don't know, f3. f3 is pretty obvious, but maybe he didn't notice that by putting his queen here he had managed to defend the f3 square. Anyway, he just played b5 and allowed me to mate him like this. A very nice mate, exploiting the pin. So, fun game, I thought. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Bye.